Hello, and welcome to the January edition of the Cinetopia radio show and podcast. I'm Amanda, your host, and it's a new year, so we have many new films to review on this film-packed episode. First, we're starting with Nosferatu, Robert Eggers' new take on a Gothic cinema classic. We Live in Time, A24's romantic drama starring Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh, directed by John Crowley. A Real Pain, directed, written, and starring Jesse Eisenberg, also starring Kieran Culkin. And finally, Babygirl, directed by Helena Rain, starring Nicole Kidman, Harris Dickinson, and Antonio Banderas. All on this show, so stay tuned. It's the very start of a new year, and Cinetopia is working on lots of exciting projects and events we can't wait to tell you about. But first up, we are back with networking at Whitespace Gallery on the 12th of February. So come by from 6 to 10 p.m. and connect with fellow film industry folks over drinks and informal chats. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out and keen to learn more, our networking events are all about building connections and community in the local film industry. And it's free to attend, so just RSVP if you can. Save the date for later in the month. On the 26th of February, we're bringing back our Doc Club program to the Cameo Cinema with As the Tide Comes In. The 27 residents of Danish Wadden Sea Island and Mando experience the forces of climate change in the form of severe weather and risk of flooding. The film was directed by Juan Palacios and Sophie Husum Johansson. We interviewed Juan as part of our IDFA special a few years ago, and we really loved this film when we saw it in Edinburgh, so we're excited to be bringing it to Edinburgh as part of our doc series in February. Also, if you haven't seen, we've started a Substack, Cinetopia Recommends, where we share a ton of film events and opportunities happening in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Scotland, and beyond. It's one way we try to highlight and connect the film community here in Scotland. If you sign up, you'll get our weekly update on what's on in the area film-wise. But also, if you have a film event, opportunity, film news you want to share, write to us. We have a submission form, and we'd love to share your events and happenings so we can plug them as well. You can find all of this on our website at cinetopia.co.uk. Welcome to the Cinetopia radio show and podcast. It's 2025, and I'm here with two regulars, Garry and Robert. Happy New Year, Garry and Robert.
Happy New Year, Amanda. Thanks for having me back. It's been a wee while. I was looking back at my my notes. September was the last episode I was on, so
Oh,
I've
really?
missed a whole quarter. So
Yeah, and I think, Robert, you were on that one as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I think that was the last one as well. That was the Rebel Ridge one, right? That was
Yeah,
September,
Substance, and I loved the Substance, and you guys didn't. I remember that one. But yeah, no, we're here. We're here to talk about this is huge season. There's so many films out right now in cinemas. There's tons of festivals going out. You know me, I love awards. There's so many awards events coming up. Golden Globes just happened. And whatnot, but let's talk a little bit about it. What we're looking forward to. It seems as though the Golden Globes actually had some quite interesting winners. It was a bit of a surprise. Amelia Perez took in so many, and on our last show we weren't the biggest of fans of that film. But yeah. What do you think in terms of, I know, Garry, you're really into like putting bets on films and stuff like that. How do you see this award season going?
well, yeah, you're right. There was a few big surprises at the Golden Globes, and it's kind of thrown a spanner into what I thought was going to happen at the Oscars. So big shock was that Anora came away empty-handed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my pick for Best Picture was Anora. So now I'm like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but. Fernanda Torres won Best Actress as well for I'm Still Here, a film that I don't think's had a UK release. So I'm kind of curious to see that as and when I'll be able to, because I think it was all set to be a race between Angelina Jolie for Maria and Nicole Kidman for Babygirl, and neither of them won in the end. So that was a bit of a surprise as well. So yeah, I think it's interesting because BAFTA's been doing their own thing in the past couple of years. So it's never really an indicator of the Oscars. Golden Globes are usually kind of more in line with the Oscars, but yeah, it makes it more exciting. There's going to be there's going to be lots of fun shocks and surprises. I'm not sure when the nominations are going to be announced, but yeah, some of my outside picks were I was kind of hoping Clarence Macklin was going to get a shout for Best Supporting Actor, who was in Sing Sing, which we all saw back at Edinburgh Festival back in August. So I've been kind of rooting for him and rooting for Coleman Domingo as well for Best Actor, who I think Coleman Domingo will get a nomination, but I think Clarence Macklin's race might be run. He seems to have fallen by the wayside a little bit, but yeah, it's always interesting coming into this stage. But there's so many of the big films I've not seen yet, so yeah, still to see The Brutalist. So that comes out in the UK in a couple of weeks. But well, what are your thoughts on it, Robert?
In regards to the award stuff, it's not something that I keep track of or want to make predictions of, but kind of like the things that I'm interested in. I think for animated feature, especially with the Golden Globes, it locked that the frontrunners are Flow and The Wild Robot. I think that it's between them two. The other three slots are just going to be kind of toss. I think that if I had to be honest, I think that this with the animated category, I think that Flow to me is my frontrunner. Similar to how Godzilla Minus One won Best Visual Effects. It's not necessarily the best one, but due to the size of the team, the budgets, everything like that combined, I think that's why it's going to kind of push that to the front. For foreign language film, Emily Perez kind of dominating, or Amelia Perez is. I like that movie. I know that I'm in the minority with liking that movie. But I think there's some admissions. I think the one that I think that goes the longest, Black Dog. I thought that would do well, especially after how well it did at Cannes. I thought that would continue throughout the year, but it seems that it's not kind of lost its momentum. But I don't know if that's just the fact that I don't know if it's come out in the US already or it's slowly starting to come out, so people aren't really getting eyes on it. We were lucky that we got to see it in August. But yeah, that's kind of like the big one coming from me because I think that's an amazing film, and I don't think China have put it forward for the Oscars, which I also find to be really weird as well. Yeah, because the list for all the countries that they've nominated is going forward, so China I don't think put anything forward, and I think that Japan are going to be not particularly happy that Cloud is not doing well. I don't think Cloud will get nominated this year for Japan, which as someone who hasn't seen it yet because it's not got UK release, yeah, I think that there's probably better Japanese films from that year that they could have put forward and could have resonated more with voters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
saw
think
that Black Dog was listed, I think longlisted for
Yeah,
BAFTA,
for BAFTA.
right?
I think it's interesting with the international category because sometimes a film might be the best, the very well regarded and considered the best film, but the reason that it doesn't win is because the country never put it up for it. Because I guess the
Yeah.
country only got one entry, so it's
And it's all super political. Like Anatomy of a Fall wasn't put forward for France because a lot of that was in English, and the selection board didn't like that. RRR wasn't put forward because that's main language is in Telugu, and they want to brush over a lot of the politics. They like to put Hindi films forward. That's why All We Imagine Is Light wasn't put forward as well. There is a lot of politics around why certain films are selected by the countries, and especially films. Especially the bigger name ones are the ones like I think Japan for Godzilla Minus One was also a big mess because I think that would have I don't know if it would have got nominated, but I think it still would have done I think really well for that category. But there's a lot of politics behind why it's like, and that's why I think France picked Amelia Perez this year because I think they're like we learned from our mistakes. We're gonna pick the big festival movie because before it hit the mainstream, it hit Netflix. It was doing, I don't say universally well with critics, but it was doing pretty well with critics. And then as soon as it dropped on Netflix, I think when more people got to see it, the general public formed their own opinion on it, and it's what one of the lowest rated films on Letterboxd according for in this award season or something. It's up there with like Crash and all that, so it's gonna be because I think that is going to get nominated for Best Picture. I think I had to put a lock in. I think that's, but so whether it wins, I don't think it'll win though.
I can see it winning for the Oscars. I also thought it was interesting because it is Netflix, whether or not that had any sway. Because I was a bit shocked that it did win. Not that I don't appreciate Jacques Audiard as a director. It was just something that I found seemed to sweep in a way that wasn't, wasn't alongside the popular thing. I mean, also speaking of politics, I also thought that we had a chance with The Apprentice, so there's some nominations there, and then they sort of didn't seem to get Sebastian Stan. I haven't seen A Different Man, but he won for a different film than he won for The Apprentice. So these are really interesting things. I mean, certainly for me, the actors will be interesting. Interesting things. Like I was really, as you know, really loved The Substance. One of my favorite films last year. Was really happy to see Demi Moore. We'll be talking about Babygirl. Was really kind of rooting for, to be honest, for Nicole Kidman. I think those two roles sort of show like more mature actresses who are coming back into like roles that sort of fit them now as they were like, but also reminiscent of their sort of previous, stardom that are really interesting. And so, yeah, it was a bit of shock to me but I also was curious about the various new voices that were sort of being represented as well with this. So it'd be interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Demi Moore is now joint favorite with Mikey Madison, so it's going to be an interesting run in there. Just going back to Emilia Perez briefly, I'm the same as you. I really like the director Jacques Audiard, and it doesn't surprise me really that France have pushed it so much, because I was in Paris and back in August, and it was everywhere in Paris. It was posters for it. It was like out in every cinema, and it was like, I think that was a few months before we got it in the UK and on Netflix. But yeah, I quite like that there's a big film like that that's coming along and dividing audiences. I'm kind of a bit, I don't know where I quite sit on it. But I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. I'm kind of just like, I don't know. I like that it's in the race because it's making for interesting conversations.
Yeah. And I know we all haven't seen Brutalist. I'm about to go see it this week, so sadly, by the time this airs, I will probably have seen it. And because I have the option to go to one cinema and see it in 35, and I think you can see it in 70 mil. That's one way, and also IMAX. And I can't decide, do I go in to see it 35 millimeter or do I go to the IMAX screening? But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. It's clearly, had a lot of buzz, of course, throughout the festivals, and now did quite well with the Golden Globes as well. So it seems like a front runner. But I also think Conclave could be like, could come in and take the Oscar, because it was probably, as we talked about in the last episode, we really it was a really fun film and everyone loves it. So
Yeah, I just mentioning the Brutalist. I bought my ticket the other day for IMAX for the Saturday morning, because it is like 3.5 hours long, and I've got plans that Saturday night. So I was like, I need to book an early showing so that I can fit it into the day because it's so long. But yeah, Adrian Brody, I think, is one of the favorites for Best Actor, alongside Ralph Fiennes for Conclave, and Coleman Domingo, who I mentioned it maybe, and we've not even mentioned Timothy yet.
yeah.
Timothy, one of the nominees, one of the kind of the front runners as well for playing Bob Dylan in A Complete Unknown, which I'm going to go and see this weekend. So it sort of seems like it's still up in the air. It could be anyone's.
Yeah. I had to say, I'm not a Timothée Chalamet fan. When we did Dune, I can tell you I did not really get into Dune because of him, but he didn't do a bad job. I was pretty impressed by his Bob Dylan singing, which
Yeah.
it's not the best singing in the world, but obviously it was a classic biopic, but he was believable. He wasn't Timothée Chalamet. He did sort of transform himself into being Bob Dylan for a bit. So, I wouldn't be horrified if he won.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen and heard, yeah, it looks like he's great in it. I think the fifth spot, just go talking about the Best Actor race, might go to Daniel Craig for Queer, which I saw a few weeks ago and really loved. I don't know if you guys spoke about queer on a previous episode, but I'd highly recommend people trying to find it. I think it's going to be out on movie soon, probably. It's
Okay.
like Luca Guadagnino. Thought it was one of the best films of last year, so it made it into my top 10 of the 2024 list. Thought it
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah, I missed it, and I think we missed our December edition, which it would have gone on. Um, but yeah, no, he's definitely been in the running for sure, and we'll
Yeah.
definitely check it out. All on top of all the awards season that is currently happening, and some of it might be slightly delayed right now. I mean, there's a horrible tragedy that's going on in LA in terms of fires, and really hoping that all of this, gets resolved as soon as possible. But I do know that they are delaying some things, coming out. There's awards. There are smaller awards other than the Golden Globes that, are being moved around, and potentially the nominations. But I just saw in the news that Sundance is most likely going to move ahead, which is in about when this airs, about 7 days, I think. So that will be a big festival coming out. And then there's Berlinale, which we will be covering as part of our show, which is quite exciting. And then there's Glasgow Film, which is coming shortly after that. So, all the different international and our local festival, that's quite important. Anything from those festivals that you've heard about that you're looking forward to seeing or eventually?
So if I take a guess, because the previous years, the film Baby Assassins, the Japanese action films have been at Glasgow. So I hope that the third one, Baby Assassins 19s, will be at Glasgow. They're like my bread and butter when it comes to those films. I heard the new one's the best one, so I'm praying that that's there. I don't know what to expect really from Glasgow, because that's kind of that some of the stuff. It's like newer stuff, but it's some stuff from last year that may have debuted. Stuff like other like TIFF and stuff maybe coming over. There's those smaller movies, so it's kind of like a wait and see. Where I think Berlin is more about the first start of the world premieres and stuff like that for. Or the stuff, some stuff that comes from Sundance goes to Berlin, and I'm interested in Glasgow because I'm not going to be at Berlin, so hopefully Glasgow has a good varied program. It usually does, so hopefully that continues into this year.
Yeah, I've kind of put Glasgow in the back burner a little bit, if I'm honest. This year, I will be there and I will be excited to go, but for the first time ever, I'm going to be in Berlin. So yeah, and I know you go every year, Amanda. So I'm really looking forward to going. So I've been keen to sort of see what titles have been getting announced, and yeah, read the other day that the long-awaited Bong Joon-ho Mickey 17 sci-fi movie with Robert Pattinson is going to premiere there. So.
Great.
Chances are it'll premiere probably the night before I get there, but I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, I'll get to see that. And Ira Sachs, director, that was at Edinburgh Festival, I think the year before last. It was quite cool because when I got the chance to interview him 2023, and he was saying the thing that he was working on next was a different project with Ben Whishaw, and it was quite cool to see that project is going to be on at Berlin. So I'm hoping that I could see that, because I love Ben Whishaw, and Ira Sachs is great as well. So those are the two kind of on my radar. But the program I think comes out first week of February, so it's like pretty quickly before the festival starts. So it'll just be a bit of a try and throw a plan together, and then off we go. But I'm excited to do a festival that I've never done before.
Yeah. And I don't actually get to go every year, but I do get to go this year, which I'm very excited. And it is one of those it's one of those really fascinating festivals, because you can see things that you'll never see in the cinema, probably, very likely. Like, just it's a huge program. Films that we will want to hopefully bring as part of our doc program here. That's one reason why we like to go. And but also these big films like Iris Axe as well. Like, we really liked Passages, I know, when we reviewed it before. And so, yeah, so it's very exciting, exciting time. And so is Sundance as well. So, but also a big shout out to the opening film of Glasgow Film Festival. It's a local filmmaker, Laura Carrera, on Falling. It's being distributed by Conic. So it has been playing. I think it won San Sebastian, and it also was at the London Film Festival. But it's doing really, really well, and winning lots of awards. It's the opening film, I believe, of the Glasgow Film Festival, and we're very excited to see that, and hopefully talk to Laura as well at some point in the next coming months. But yeah, that's very exciting. It's Edinburgh-based filmmaker, been in the scene for a while, and it's really getting some really great reviews. So I'd be excited to see that, and hope everyone goes and checks that out as well. But now we're going to get to 4 films that are mostly I would say, in the contention, but like Oscar nominations and stuff like that. A lot of good buzz around all of them. And so we'll be talking about them, but they're also out in cinemas at the moment, I believe. And that those 4 films is Nosferatu, and We Live in Time, A Real Pain, and Babygirl. And so we'll start with Nosferatu, and keep it all like enticing and scary. I seem to be going to lots more horror films thanks to this show. But yeah, so Nosferatu.
Come to me. Come to me. I've never shared my secret with any soul.
You've had these spells since childhood. Tell me what you can from the beginning.
It is like a dream. It was our wedding. When we turned around, everyone was dead. The stench of their bodies was horrible. Standing before me was death. But I'd never been so happy.
So for Nosferatu, brief introduction to this film, kind of give some context behind it. So this is a remake of the original, I believe, a German movie of the same name. It was an unofficial adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and at the time it could have been lost media because they lost the court case and they were asked to destroy all the copies of the movie. Luckily that didn't happen, and we still have this movie to this very date. So if you've seen other Dracula stories, you kind of know the general plot. It basically follows. Mainly because a big thing about Robert Eggers is they speak at the time, so it's quite hard to remember all of their characters' names. But yeah, basically it opens with a young Ellen, who's played by Lily Rose Depp, and she's enticed by this ghostly spirit at the window, and enticing it. For that is Count Orlok, who then is referred to later on in the film as Nosferatu, and essentially they have a connection with each other that is not really explained, but there's some form of connection between the two, whether it's romantic or supernatural. Doesn't need to be explained, but there's something connecting them. And then we jump years later. She's then married to Nicholas Holt's character, which is, I think it's called Thomas, and he's basically instructed to sell a house in Germany to Count Orlok. So he goes on a treacherous journey to go to his castle. I can't remember the state exactly where it is, but kind of a Transylvania-esque location, in Europe, and he encounters different cultures that are trying to get rid of his presence, and there's a fear around the castle, and essentially it goes from there. And while that's happening, while he's at the castle trying to sell his house, Ellen is weirdly possessed and talks about how he is coming, and like has kind of like exorcist moments, which like kind of like crabs up and everything in the bed, and they have to got to deal with that, as well as Thomas being with Nosferatu or Count Orlok in the castle. It goes from there.
Yep.
So yeah, what were your guys' thoughts on Nosferatu?
I'm a big fan of Robert Eggers, and I think telling the Nosferatu story in terms of the visual artistry of it is kind of like a perfect fit for his style of filmmaking. Like we've seen him do The Witch and The Lighthouse and The Northman. I guess The Northman was maybe a slight departure from his like usual kind of gothic style, but he's kind of back in full gothic grotesque mode in Nosferatu, and it's the film's really a work of art in terms of the use of color, like the way that the camera kind of like has these odd camera movements, the way that it kind of swoops around and follows characters around the screen. I really enjoyed the visual aspects of it, the sound, the tone. Thought he like captured it all really well. Yeah, well, I don't think it's like a perfect movie, but I think it's another tick in the box for Robert Eggers in terms of bringing his artistic vision to the screen. What did you make of it, Amanda?
Well, I'm not like a huge, I mean, actually I saw The Northman and I thought it was quite interesting or whatnot, but I was curious about this because I know he's quite good about making historical films and really being detailed to the history. So for me, as someone who likes historical stuff, I was really intrigued by that enough. I wouldn't say this was a pleasant experience for me because again, grotesque and gothic is not my it's not my vibe. Um, but I also have a fascination with like German expressionism and sort of Nosferatu and like why that is so important with our sort of our experience of film and cinema. So visually, as you said, I think it was interesting. I think storyline or character, I wasn't like, I wasn't just so into the story as much as perhaps I think I felt a little academic in that way, but also slightly grotesque as well. So I believed how scary and gross, Count Orlok was. So it was very interestingly visually, but like story wise, I think, and I'm seeing that with like the reviewers, like the top critics are really liking this film and like really sort of fitting it into like, this is a smartly made Dracula film and it's very on top of its, 1830s Germany and Slovakia and all this sort of connections and stuff. But is it really resonating with like the audience? I don't know. Like it was okay for me.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of the story. I didn't want to go fully in. I was curious. I wanted to hear your thoughts on it first before I was saying mine. I do feel like the story kind of like dips in the middle a little bit, and they introduce these characters, and there's a little bit of like zone out in the middle act until Willem Dafoe comes up. I feel like it picks up again when Willem Dafoe comes in, but I do think that the story, as much as like Robert Eggers loves the historical details, like the Dracula story has been told and changed many times over the years. Like I recently watched the Francis Ford Coppola version because I was curious to see it alongside Nosferatu, and yeah, I don't know if I was loving some of the choices of the script made in terms of the character choices and their agency, but yeah, so I'm kind of middle on it. The script wise, not so great, but visually stunning. What were your thoughts on it, Robert?
So, in regards to this, I think the opening of the film, if we can briefly talk about that, encapsulates everything that I love and hate about this movie. So the opening of the movie is so gorgeous. Like it opens on a black screen. If we know the title cards that are all old fashioned for the studios as well, which is something that I think he always has done. I can't remember if he did it in the Northman, but it's visually stunning. And you see Lily Rose Depp come forward from the darkness. It's so beautiful, and then the way you see the shadow of Nosferatu in the curtain, it's just like, or Count Orlok, it's gorgeous. It's scary, and her walking up to the garden, and then she's getting like possessed, and then there's a big old jump scare with loud music, and it's trying to make you scared, and I'm like, I'm already scared, and And that's my big thing throughout this movie is, which is weird for a Robert Eggers movie, is that he relies heavily on music and the combination of music and spooky visuals to jump scare you. Like there's a scene with a carriage that appears and the horse scares Nicholas Hoult, but it places like like very obvious. You should get scared of this horse jumps up and like spooks you, and this happens many times in the movie where there's very obvious jump scares that I think really pulled me out of it.
Yeah.
It's like he's trying to please the people who might see this film that have never seen a Robert Eggers movie before. Because it's like The Witch, like I've not seen The Witch in a long time, but I don't think The Witch has many obvious jump scares in that movie, or like ones that are like similar. There's the famous one where she does the peekaboo and the baby disappears, but that's like that's not really a jump scare. It's the way that I think that modern culture would refer it as in loud noise and music screaming at you. But yeah, I found that it was beautiful, and but I just was like, yeah, this is like when it does like the cliche horror stuff. It's like I don't find this interesting. Like it's in the trailers. The shot of his hand going over the city is magical, and the shot of like there's so many moments that are just wonderful. But then he plays into cliche horror, and it's like okay, like there's the scenes on the boat where he's eating people, and it's like okay, like it's like it feels like it's trying to satisfy an audience that I don't think an audience that haven't enticed Robert Eggers fans. That makes sense. Like the people like us like Robert Eggers because he makes surreal horror, and it's like, and I know he's done jump scares before. Like I think The Lighthouse has a jump scare in it, but like that's never been there's not been many of them. It's all about like the surreal imagery or like the vibes that he's created that is horrific. So yeah, it just felt like it was clashing at times throughout the movie.
Yeah, I think he's caught between, like, his films are creepy without playing to the tropes, but you can tell that he's like that massive like film fan. Like you can always tell when you're watching a film that's direct. I mean, obviously most directors are big film fans, but some are like meticulous with their detail and the way that they kind of hark back to other films. And I think Robert Eggers is one of those filmmakers. I wanted to mention, actually, talking of like horror films and how it does this thing a little bit, I guess a lot of horror films do, where they tease what the villain's going to look like or how the villain's going to look, and then once you can kind of see the villain on screen, the scariness of the villain is almost diminished because you're like, well, I've seen them now. So part of what made them scary was like the thought of what they were going to be like. And I think like we mentioned a horror film last year, it was Longlegs. I feel like as soon as I saw Nicolas Cage as Longlegs, I was like, okay, that's Nicolas Cage. It's like, I'm not, like, it took me out of the film a little bit. Whereas I feel like with this one, with like Bill Skarsgård with like his disgusting makeup on and that he's the prosthetics and how they did it, even when you see him, you're like, yeah, he is horrific and disgusting and grotesque. And I feel like fair play for them like getting that right, because I do think they was like as disgusting as you would imagine him to be before you see him.
Yeah, completely. I also find it quite a bit amusing with casting Nicholas Hoult, because I don't know if you saw the Renfield Nicolas Cage Dracula funny movie, but he was paid Renfield in that. So I was like that. It was hitting me a bit, like having. Oh, again, I haven't seen that many Dracula movies. It's not Gothic cinema is not my genre, but still, it was like, oh, that's interesting. Now he's playing a very serious role, but he didn't do a bad job. And I don't think the acting was that bad. I just think it was like I think I did read this as one of his most popular, or it was going to be one of his most popular films. So it was more for a larger audience. And I don't think that it necessarily, like you said, with these sort of playing with these jump scares or something like that, I'm not sure he attempted to try to get a larger audience in that way, but maybe that, it just didn't work. And I think the audience gets that, like the audience reviews are, they're mixed. They hate it. It's a great, it is a really interesting film. It is beautiful. It is scary. Will have nightmares about rats for a long time. It wasn't 100% 10 out of 10, if you will, for me.
So I have two questions to pose to you guys. So the first question is especially because a lot of the cast we all know are amazing, like Bill Skarsgård, Nicholas Hoult, and William Dafoe, which is also incredible. But what do we think of the ones that came to mind that we really want to talk about is Lily Rose Depp and Aaron Taylor Johnson, because it was like, especially with Aaron Taylor Johnson, because I saw Craven the Hunter and I forgot that he could act when I saw that movie, and I saw this movie like, oh, you can act. Like, it was weird because Craven the Hunter was not good, and I don't think he was kind of bland in it. And then seeing him in here, it was refreshing to see him like play this character, and especially when he goes later in the movie, he brings a lot of range to the role. And I thought really as Depp what she was given, I thought she was all right. I don't think she was particularly amazing, but I don't really know. I don't know if that's a script thing or just where that was her direction. What she was given, because a lot of her role is a bit more of the surreal aspect compared to Nicholas Hoult. That is more of the horrified aspect of it. So, what did you guys think of the acting in those regards?
And cast wise, I think like the sort of the subplot with the other couple, Emma Corrin and Aaron Taylor Johnson, I was kind of neither here nor there with them. Like they were part of the group, but nobody really like. I think the part where they're in it more is maybe the part where I was losing a bit of interest. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on Aaron Taylor Johnson. I did see some reviews saying that they thought he was like really bad in it, and that he took them out of the film. But I'm not really one way or the other on it. I feel like maybe there is a bit of a dip. I thought Nicholas Hoult was really great in that kind of opening act where he goes journeying off to see Count Orlok. I feel like maybe that opening couple of chapters is maybe the film's strongest. I think I love Nicholas Hoult. I think he's having a really like fun time in everything that he's doing at the moment. I think he's been great. Lily Rose Depp, I don't know. I kept kind of thinking there's a actor who's been starring in a lot of stuff who's similar to Lily Rose Depp, called Ella Purnell, who's been in like Sweet Pea and Yellow Jackets and things. Part of me is watching that film thinking, Lily, I don't think she did a bad job, but she didn't blow me away either with the performance. Part of me was thinking, I wonder if they'd made it in a year's time, maybe if Ella Purnell, I was picturing her like thinking she could have done the role, or maybe could have done it a little bit better. I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know. I guess like there's just similarities to their expressions and the type of roles that they take on. But I don't think anyone was particularly bad in it. But I think the standout was probably Willem Dafoe, because he's just like a good fit for Robert Eggers as well. Like he was great in The Lighthouse, and like but cast wise, I don't know. I feel like the cast of is mostly fine.
Yeah, I see. I think I don't know. I haven't seen Lily Rose Depp in anything. I think there was this film, The Idol, or this TV show that was really poorly panned, but I didn't see it. And
yeah, that show is treacherous in terms of its production, because I believe that show was directed by someone else, and Sam Levinson came in, I'm like, I don't like this, I'm going to reshoot a lot of it, and I believe he basically took over that project. So I heard that went for a lot of creative.
It wasn't her best, coming out a big, that maybe they had hoped it would be. But this, I think I bought her visually, the way their makeup and everything was, as like the bride, or not the bride, but the love interest of Nosferatu, and and being possessed and whatnot. I mean, it was like vibey, like everyone felt like they fit, and in the film, cast wise. And I think I remember that also with The Northman, like you've sort of seen people that you normally see in other kinds of films seem to work, like Nicole Kidman or Ethan Hawke or whatnot. So I think they worked fine. I think it was just it just didn't hold up the whole time. Like, apart, like you said, there was a few these jump scares or these visually like entertaining things, and sucking blood out of children and stuff like that, which is just gross and keeps you entertained. But but not really sort of filling it completely. Maybe, yeah, if William Dafoe had popped in a few more times at the beginning, it would have been different or something. I don't know. But yeah, it just, yeah, it was okay. But glad I saw it. Maybe I'll go back and watch this Francis Ford Coppola one. I haven't seen that in so many years as well. So interested in, yeah, see it if you'd like. It's Nosferatu, and it's out in cinemas near you.
There is something that your daddy and I
There's something that Mummy and me want to...
we want to talk to you about. It's a bit serious, though.
What's happened to my underwear?
Oh, I literally have no idea.
So sorry, but do we know each other?
Yeah, no, I ran you over. Sorry.
It's all right.
I'm Alma, by the way.
Tobias.
We're going to make sure you have the time of your life.
Hi.
Hi. Probably ought to get going.
Who says? Unless you have shit to do, then...
I have nothing. Whether we like it or not, the clock is ticking.
What's the rush?
Because I'm worried that there's a very distinct and real possibility that I am about to fall in love with you.
The next film we're going to review is We Live in Time. And Gary, tell us about that film.
So We Live in Time is the latest film by director John Crowley, who's kind of best known for Brooklyn from a few years back. So in this one, it's a rom-com of sorts, kind of mixed with a weepy, and it follows a couple played by Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield, and it's a kind of slice of life drama with highs and lows, but the kind of thing that separates the way that the story's told is it's a non-linear structure. So we kind of get dropped in and pulled out, pulled back in again at different times in their life, and we see them deal with comedy and tragedy along the way. I thought that this was really great. And I know that people had some issues with the non-linear structure. It does feel like it's a little bit manufactured to make you... So you can kind of like see the film's kind of like pulling the strings behind, like, cry now, be upset now. Like, it's kind of got like cues for how the emotions are supposed to go up and down throughout the movie. Because for it being a movie about again, I mean, it's not a spoiler to say that there's a cancer diagnosis in the movie. It's in the trailer and stuff. So for a movie that's largely about cancer and grief, there is a lot of like funny moments in it. And I think the film largely works due to casting two of the most popular actors in the world, in Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield. I think they share nice chemistry on it. And I think what the film does well is that it shows them as quite fully rounded characters, in that they bicker and they make mistakes and they argue and they fall out, and you can kind of see the ripple effect of decisions that they make at the beginning of the relationship and how that leads to where they end up. And I think it's quite interesting to kind of use this non-linear structure, a little bit like maybe Blue Valentine from like 10 years ago. The way that did it, where you kind of see the end of a relationship before you see the beginning, and it kind of toys with how things might not quite pan out how you think they're going to at the beginning. What did you make of it, Robert?
So in regards to this, I thought it was just a nice movie. It's one of those things where it's one of the things where I can admit it's not necessarily my type of movie. It's not really one that's going to gravitate towards to me, but I had a fun time watching it when I saw it. It's cute. Like I said, the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh is palpable. You truly believe that they could be this, genuine couple that, meet by a freak accident or a literal accident if you've seen the movie. And it was just nice. The non-linear structure, I think, is good. I think because it kind of focuses, I think it's on 3 time periods, if I remember right. It's like the start of the relationship, and then the middle, not quite, I don't see the end, but free to think the time periods of the relationship. But there is a certain point where it becomes linear. It does, from what I remember, it does become a linear narrative. And I think that leads to really great emotion at the end. Because I think if you told the other story before it becomes linear, linearly, it wouldn't really be interesting or have the same highs and lows that I think it does. I think it really adds to the narrative that it's told in its way. How they reveal information to you is very purposeful, and I think that it's really clever. And like even then, like how it jumps between time, it's like it's never confusing. There's always like distinctions about whether it be where they live or their haircuts or stuff like that. It's very obvious how where we are in this time period, and it's just a really good movie. I think that it's just a good time.
Yeah, I think I'm probably colder on it than the two of you. Not to say that this isn't my kind of film. I tend to turn off films around cancer stories or things like that. But I do agree with you that the chemistry was incredible. I mean, compared to I think when we were talking about Oppenheimer and Florence playing, that wasn't as I didn't really buy the chemistry in that film. I think also I only see Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man for whatever reason. Like, so I again was like, wow, I mean, and you said he's one of the most famous actors in the world, but like maybe I just don't watch that many Spider-Man films, and so I'm like, I was actually very impressed by Andrew Garfield in this, and I already love Florence, so their chemistry kept me going with the film. The back and forth stuff wasn't as annoying as Outrun, which I thought Outrun was all over the place, but like Outrun had some sort of organization with the color of the hair. So this was a little this was a little annoying for me, and it did feel like a bit of a trope, but I do see your point, Robert. At the end, it does kind of stick with something for a while, at the end. And I do think it gets better there with that. But I just didn't, I mean, maybe I had more expectations with it. I had a interesting campaign to get out, like they had this funny like poster meme stuff, and also it's an A24 film, I guess. So maybe I'm sort of thinking like, there's more than this story. But yeah, I mean, it was fine. And again, lovely romance, and I buy it. And it's love, it was nice to watch these two great actors on screen. But not much for me other than that, getting out of that.
Yeah, I think with lesser performers, it could have been it could have been quite an average film, but I think that definitely Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh elevate it. Like, I'm the same as you. I love Florence Pugh. I feel like she never really puts much of a foot wrong, even if the film that she's in is not great. She's usually really good in it. And it's good to see her in a role where I guess she does have she never really has an easy ride of it with the characters that she plays.
Yeah.
So she's kind of got that the frowny face is back in this role, but it's interesting to see her play like contemporary character that you can relate to, maybe a bit more, because she does tend to pick like period pieces or like obviously she's done the superhero thing with the Black Widow stuff. But I think that yeah, I thought she was great, and it's very on trend, I guess, like her playing a chef as well. I guess like we're in that moment where everyone's watching The Bear, or like there was Boiling Point. Like her to play this fine dining chef adds a little bit of like excitement, and like I don't know if there was any intention in casting her, but everyone who's a lot of people that are a big fan of her follow her on Instagram, where she does like her little cooking videos where she'll like put a recipe together for her fans. So I think that it's one for the fans to see her cooking on the big screen. Thought that was quite a funny little like touch to the film, the fact that she's a chef. But yeah, I really liked it. But I do think that the actors elevate it.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Robert? Or are you good?
The only thing I want to add is I found their first introduction to be silly. I don't understand why he didn't ask the hotel staff if they had pens. Don't know why he had to go to the shops. That slightly took me out of it because it's like it sounds really like I'm not a nitpicky person because I find like we live in an era where nitpicky criticisms, mainly I'll blame them. Cinema Sins kind of caused this with whether they view them as criticism or not. They say it's parodies, but then there's a whole thing about that. But like it was a bit weird how he didn't ask the hotel staff for a pen. He just went straight to the shop. But that is a very nitpicky thing for me. But
We need to build their meet cute. So
yeah, it's like, but yeah, that's a very nitpicky thing, and I understand that's just mainly me being silly. But apart from that, yeah, it's just a good movie. I think there's nothing really, I don't say deep about because I think there's a lot of deep stuff about it, especially if it comes to about. I think a key scene for a lot of people, especially a relationship that I don't really see talked about in movies, maybe because I don't watch these type of movies, is the aspect around having a family or not, but whether they want to have kids and stuff. I found that to be really quite a nice moment in having that discussion, and I thought that was probably my favorite scene when I saw the movie.
Yeah.
Was them, them trying to have kids and the ups and downs around that. I thought that was a really cute moment, and yeah, I think more films should tackle the idea of people not having kids, or maybe I just need to watch more of them.
I agree with you. From a personal point of view, I pick up on that a lot in movies where it seems that the discussion's never had early in a relationship, which kind of just doesn't make sense to me. So the fact that there's a scene where he raises it again, I don't want to go into the too much detail of the film, but he kind of brings up that topic and then gets shut down, and it causes a big argument where he's kind of portrayed to being in the wrong. And I'm watching it thinking, surely it's valid to bring up whether you want to have kids or not when you're in a relationship, especially when they meet, when they're in their, Andrew Garfield's 40. So it's to bring it up. But I think it does kind of bring up interesting discussions around that, which I think, like you say, it's rare because it just seems like every couple on screen, whether it's TV or whether it's film, if there's a pregnancy, 99 times out of 100, they end up having the baby.
Yeah, I think media focuses more about not whether they want to have kids; it's more of the struggle of having children.
Yeah.
Than necessarily the step before that, do we even want children? And especially as things evolve with relationships and how relationships play out, I think it's important to see that type of representation on a screen, especially because there will be people out there that never want children, and I think that's I don't relate to that, but because but there's people, yeah. So it's just nice to see different types of relationships. I think it's important to see, because even if I can't relate to it, there might be other people that do see it that go, "Oh, because I'm not weird for thinking I don't want to have kids. That's not weird." Because I was watching some YouTube videos and there's an old, I think it's from the Celluloid Closet. I've not seen the documentary, but I was watching a video about it, and so Richard Dyer talks about how our culture is shaped by the movies. And I think that if we see things on screen that are accepted part of our culture, people will resonate with that and come to terms of things that they're questioning about or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point, and I think it's important that cinema doesn't just show the most popular opinions or way to live a life, or it should show all aspects, and audiences should be able to relate to all different types of stories.
Yeah.
I was more interested in the discussions before they have a kid than when they have a kid. But again, if anyone's seen the trailer, they're speaking to their kid at the beginning of the trailer, so it's not a spoiler that they do have the kid, but they have the kid. But I do think that some of those scenes are interesting. It's it's conversations that aren't often shown on screen. So
yeah, and it again plays to the actors, their roles, how well they did, the conversations around what it is to be a human, having your identity when you're faced with life. life things that happen that you don't want to happen, end of life conversations where you're thinking about what matters and what, and when you're starting a life. So there's a really like serious conversations, like you said, that aren't often brought in films like this, that were fascinating and well done. But I don't think without these actors, that this would have been as good of a film for sure. Again, you both liked it a bit more than I did, but I appreciated it. But I appreciated it definitely for the acting and the believability of this couple, for sure. But We Live in Time, it's out currently, and you can check it out if you like.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
Boner.
Is not available.
Hey, Benji, I just got to the airport. I really hope you left already. Oh, God, you made it.
What's up, cuz? I got some good shit from when we land.
Wait, you're not, like, taking weed into Poland, are you?
Oh, yeah.
Benji?
They don't give a shit about that stuff, man.
I think they very much do give a shit about
that.
that.
Oh, yeah.
We get high in backseats of cars.
Davers and I are cousins. We used to be joined at the hip. Our grandma was from here, so Dave arranged for us to join this geriatric Polish tour with you fine people.
That's the way we get by.
I really needed this, man. I know that it's tough for you to leave your boy.
The way we get by.
I don't really have anything going on.
I know it's been a tough few months for you, so...
I also want to say that I know you're not the most comfortable person with people.
I'm not?
No. Does it look real?
Well, they're twice the size of you in metal, so...
You sure you don't want to come up here?
I'm good.
Can you take my picture?
That's what I'm talking about. Marcia!
Thank you, David.
But it's amazing that you're here, putting yourself out there so boldly for me.
Thank you, man.
Let's go smoke a joint.
Word of warning, this will be a tour about Penn.
Our grandmother and Benji were super close.
I mean, she was the coolest. I've just been in a real funk, I guess, since she died. Just haven't,
Yeah, so A Real Pain is directed by Jesse Eisenberg, actor turned director. Everyone knows him from things like The Social Network and Zombieland and Adventureland and things. So this is his second film as a director, and it follows. So he as well as writing and directing it, he plays one of the leads. So he plays a character called David, and him and his cousin, played by Kieran Culkin, is called Benji. They meet at the airport at the beginning of the movie, and they're embarking on a trip to Poland to honor their late grandmother and go on a Holocaust tour in Poland. And it kind of taps into grief and how they both deal with grief and how they both deal with their own anxieties and, I guess, like mental health issues. And the film kind of plays as a buddy road movie, and we see them kind of like bond and bicker throughout this tour, and they navigate their feelings in very different ways. That's the synopsis. I think Jesse Eisenberg's a great writer. I think he's a writer more than he is. I think he writes plays more than he writes movies, and I think this film really plays to his strengths as a writer, because I think direction wise it's quite unfussy, and he just lets the it's kind of got a bit of a Woody Allen, shades of Woody Allen kind of style in it, the way that they establish shots and the way that there's like this little Chopin score playing through it, I guess, like a little, like, which ties in well obviously with the setting of Poland. And he really just like lets his script do the talking, and there's a lot of talking because Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin are both fast talkers, and they're both great in this, and it's really interesting to watch them both play these kind of complex characters. I thought it was really great, really funny, quick touching, and I think that there's lots of little like character details in it that kind of show their differences but also show their similarities, and it's I thought it was really well made and really interesting. What did you think of it, Amanda?
Yeah, I really liked this film. I kind of knew I would. I mean, sort of fits, as you said. I mean, I love a chatty, Woody Allen-y kind of film. I think Jesse Eisenberg also is. I don't know his other film that he's written and directed.
It's a couple of years ago. It's called When You Finish Saving the World. It was Julianne Moore and Finn Wolfhard. It was a mother-son relationship story. just from a couple of years ago. It didn't. It actually wasn't received all that well, but it's just arrived on Netflix in the UK. So I watched it recently.
Oh, right. Okay. I mean, I did like, I remember back in the day when Woody Allen was like getting into he is like Jesse Eisenberg is this like nouveau, kind of the same way that, oh, who's Greta's? Noah Baumbach has that sort of vibe to him as well in his
Yeah.
films. But like, I love a chatty film, and I think this film is more than that. I think it's really dealing with like, family relationships, feeling grief, as you said, like generational grief, and also, it's a road movie, or a travel movie as well, and it's painful in parts. I mean, the Kieran Culkin, who did win the Golden Globe for this role, did an amazing job. I think it was really well written, but there are these like office kind of moments of uncomfortability that you're sitting there with this really annoying person who is really kind of antagonizing you, and also sort of antagonizing the whole group, and making people think about those sort of things, and I think that all of those conversations in each one of these little scenes brings up something that is valid and interesting, and sort of points to what this whole film's about. And it's funny, it's sad, and it's also just enjoyable, like, and I thought, I think, like you said, the writing itself, I think, is worth it, and it's interesting. So I did enjoy it. But I kind of thought I would. Robert, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this film's great. I think that Kieran Culkin really does steal the show in this movie. Even the subtle looks that you see, that it's just a bit like, you can just tell how he's feeling with a quick camera glance, and you like, and there's so many moments where you go like, yep, something's gonna happen here, and like there's a few moments where that does happen, but I think a lot has to give to Jesse Eisenberg for the script, because there's many moments where I think Kieran Culkin, lashes out at things, or whether it be an anxiety attack, or overwhelms emotions, but he never writes him like he's a bad person. Is when you really think about it and stop and think about it, you go, not saying that he's entirely right for how he reacts, but like the things that he brings up are valid and are really, like, you can see how that grief goes, and especially because how it deals, like you said, the generational grief, but also the grief that they're currently experiencing at the same time, and both characters, how they deal with grief are very different, and I think it deals with the kind of the pros and cons of both, where I think Jesse Eisenberg's more, well, I have to be, strong on the outside, because who else? I have to work, I have to protect my family, and then, we see the opposite with Kieran Culkin, where he is more like, he tries to, like, he lashes out at things that get to him, and it's like, no, this is not right, well, this is wrong. Like, I think one of the key things that happens is the train scene, which, I think if you went to the toilet before that moment, you might come back and go, what is happening? But then, he brings up the great moment about how, this is a heritage tour, and we're sitting first class on a train, where, people's generations before that, when they went on a train, it was, they talk about how he was like knocked in the back of the head, and basically they're brought on like cattle, and it's a really powerful moment. And, then moments later it's uplifted by comedy, but it never feels like the comedy is making fun of the Holocaust or anything like that. It tries the perfect line. It's the comedy comes from the antics of these two cousins, and especially what's the word I'm looking for? The more of the outward going persona of Benji. He's very bubbly, and like the way he just goes like, I'm just going to go speak to this person on the tour. She looks alone. I'm just going to speak to her, and she just goes up and carry a conversation, and it's just, it's just a wonderful movie.
I think it's a real balancing act of the tone between the comedy and the melancholy, I guess, of it, because it's interesting putting these kind of quite modern struggles of whether it's like OCD, or I don't know if they never mention it, but like Kieran Culkin's characters there's very like extreme highs and lows, that's kind of bipolar or anxiety, and how they kind of like put this against the backdrop of generational trauma, and obviously the the war and the Holocaust. I think it's quite interesting to not compare the two, but to kind of like display contemporary struggles on top of generational trauma. But I think you're right. I think Kieran Culkin steals it. But it's funny that he's in supporting actor categories here, because he's not really a supporting actor. He's in like every scene. The film starts with him and ends with him, and he's in it. I don't know if there's some stat on like percentage of screen time on a film by a Oscar-winning supporting actor, but I feel like if when he does win, he's in like all the film basically.
Yeah, I think that's yet again another political one that they might put him for supporting because they have a higher chance. Or because there's the famous case about how Marlon Brando is the main actor of The Godfather, and he's not in as much as it is Al Pacino. So I think that could be another thing where I wonder if Searcher like we're not gonna get a lead pick because but if we put him for supporting, we might.
It's a little
push him.
Category fraud, I think.
Yeah.
But fair enough. I think he is really good, and when he gets his Oscar, which he pretty much 100% like he's gonna win.
Yeah.
Then it'll be deserved, and like he's really obviously he's best known for Roman, Roy, and Succession the past few years, and he brings a little bit of that like chaotic energy to Benji. But I've kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole of Jesse Eisenberg and interviews about this film because I have been really interested in it, and he was actually going to play Benji initially, and then but I think because he spoke about there being parts of his own personality in both characters, and he was going to play the bigger one, and then I guess he's very, very well suited to play in the character that he plays. I think he brings that nervous energy to that role really well. Whereas Kieran Culkin's got this kind of more, he's like a bit of a walking contradiction because he is full of this like charm and confidence, but you can see that underneath it he's like you could crack at any moment. So I think like there's this balancing act both of the film with the comedy and the tragedy, but also the balancing act of Kieran Culkin's performance, where it's like you never quite know what mood he's going to be in when he gets out of bed in the morning. There's a little like character details, a small moment in the film where they're getting ready to go and they're running late, and Jesse Eisenberg's very like punctual and very organized, and Kieran Culkin Benji just goes with the flow. And you can see there's a moment where he's like, when you don't untie your shoes when you get in and you just take them off and throw them to the side. So there's a bit where Jesse Eisenberg's waiting for Benji or David's waiting for Benji to get ready, and he's having to untie his shoes from the night before so that he can tie them again for that day. And I just think by having that moment in there, it's like a sort of like nice like encapsulation of the differences between the two characters and the way that they approach their day. So I thought, that was a great movie, well, brilliantly written, really well acted, and I really liked the unfussy direction that it lets actors do their thing.
That's interesting that he wanted to play that character, because now you can't really see it. I mean, I can see him because he can play an annoying character. I mean, he played Mark Zuckerberg, which is quite an annoying character. But like, but I think, he perfectly plays that role that he does, but you can see the Jesse Eisenberg in both, I suppose. Which is interesting. I do think again that like it is unfussy the way it was filmed, but it was also very pretty. I mean, it makes me think of like, oh, I want to go to Poland. But I've always found, and I think what you were saying, Gary, about tone. I mean, that for me is the real thing, because this isn't a World War II movie, but it's a film about visiting the Holocaust, which Holocaust sites, which I find the touristness of that a bit. I've always found that a bit like for my own decision of doing or not doing things, going to visit. I've not gone to Poland to visit that, but I've gone to like France and visited World War II sites and stuff like that. And that sort of strange feeling that you have, and to bring humor into a film around those kinds of conversations is a really delicate balance. And for me, there's few films that do it. So ultimately this is an interesting, fun film about a journey, of some Americans going to Poland, like which regularly happens, like you said, the heritage tour. But on the other hand, it's very beautifully shot as well, and and also kind of that sort of play like you said, theater like way of letting the acting and the situations happening, and letting those kind of unfold versus the Robert Eggers, like the intensity of Nosferatu. A totally different film. But definitely good, and I think, yeah, surprisingly good. So I'm not to say that it wouldn't have been good. It just worked really well for me. So that's A Real Pain, and that is out in cinemas now.
Good girl. Good girl.
Being a CEO means being a collaborator and a nurturer.
Don't you have to be at work?
Everyone is just waiting for me to buckle under the pressure.
Is now a good time to introduce the interns?
Yeah. Hey, how'd you get that dog to calm down?
I gave it a cookie.
You always have cookies on you.
Why do you want one?
Who decided to make me a part of that mentor program? You have 7 minutes.
So, how did it start?
I see myself as a...
Power-hungry personality?
You think that's what I am?
I think you like to be told what to do. Sorry, I didn't mean to... That was incredibly inappropriate.
Your behavior is unacceptable.
Is it?
So the final film we're going to review is Babygirl. It came out recently in the UK. I think it's been out since, I think it came out, interesting Christmas movie, but a Christmas movie nevertheless, which I also love because Nicole Kidman does some of my favorite Christmas movies and unique Christmas movies over time. But yeah, so Babygirl is said to be an erotic thriller directed by Helena Rain. And it is about a relationship, Nicole Kidman is a CEO in New York, and she has a big career and has a family with Antonio Banderas, her husband, Jacob, and runs into a young man on the street who seems to be able to calm down a very aggressive dog. Who just so happens, this young man happens to be who's played by Harris Dickinson, is also an intern in her large company. And through a few conversations and intrigue, you can see they're getting somewhat interested in each other. He makes a move, or he basically tells her what to do a little bit, and she seems to like it. And so a affair ensues between Harris Dickinson and Nicole Kidman that takes you in very many places in terms of power dynamics. So she likes to be dominated. This film is basically about that relationship, and about pleasure and trust and power dynamics and relationships. And so I'm going to ask you, Robert. You said you had an interesting time watching this film.
Yeah, so I didn't like this movie. Kind of right off the start. I think that it tries to say a lot, but I don't think it clearly. It tries to do so much, yet doesn't really go into enough depth for a lot of them. Kind of like the big thing is supposedly like she's dissatisfied with Antonio Banderas, which I do not believe. What a beautiful man.
Like Antonio Banderas. Okay.
I love Antonio Banderas. But it tries to say a lot about kind of break down things like the power dynamics. It tries to go about how she kind of abuses that because she's the CEO. But what I thought they were really going to say is like it's not the power dynamic. The problem was not the fact that she's a CEO and he's an intern. I thought they were going to talk about and play into the whole dominance versus being submissive, and the idea that it doesn't matter what you are, people will take advantage of you to kind of get what they want. Because from the get-go, he clearly has an ulterior motive from the moment. Like when he comes in, there's like a scene where she's like, "Oh, let's speak to all the interns. Like, do you have any questions?" And he basically goes, yeah, it's basically everything. All you say, like basically just talking points to sell products, and like no, and everyone's like flabbergasted, like, and they hint that he might get kicked off for saying that question, and I thought she was going to say something about the power dynamics, but then it doesn't really go into that in as much detail as I really wanted to. It, for someone who's like really wants to be submissive, she struggles at being a submissive, and I thought that they were going to go, especially for a lot of the key scenes. It's hard to describe, but like, it's like it kind of comes across comical, but like I don't understand how. And I think the film doesn't do a good job at painting how she finds those sexy, versus, because like when I saw my theater, people were laughing at some of these scenes, especially a scene with like I don't know what the type of candy, but like a hard sweet, and it's like, yeah, I think it has great ideas, but I just don't think it executes it in a way that is engaging or sexy. I think that might be the key word there, because I don't find any of the sex scenes to be actually sexy at all. I find that they're just kind of there.
So that's interesting, because I do think that I've heard that people haven't found the sex scenes as sexy as they expected them out. Again, like I said, think about the way that it was promoted as an erotic thriller. So, a little bit like Indecent Proposal or things like, or, sort of films that you sort of think about in terms of over the years, that kind of erotic thriller thing. And I don't think this film is that. I don't think it's a thriller by any means. And I do think those moments are funny and they're attempted to be funny. But I do think it's, as you rightly said, it's from her perspective. And I don't think it's necessarily, I think it's about, for me, it's not just about a woman's desire, but it's about a person's desire that is left latent and is being explored. And this is a person who has a great deal of power, of course, but wants to play with these kinds of power dynamics in her sexual life. And she's never had the kind of satisfaction that she wanted to until somebody comes around. And that person, while there is this conversation around power or not, so it does sort of fit with that, but it's more about the Harrison Dickinson character being perceptive. So being perceptive and aware of what people need. Because if you see, he sort of transforms himself throughout the film, where he can have the girlfriend who's like the Sophie Wilde's character, who's sort of and he says at some point, I feel different in this relationship versus that. And she's the one sort of obsessed with this, coming and grappling with all these things that she's frustrated with. So she's the one unraveling Nicole Kidman. It's her story. And I think that to me was, absolutely powerful. I do think it's intriguing and funny. And these moments, if those situations were to happen, would often be the awkward and strange if you were exploring that. But I also think the only other thing I really loved about this is it's built on trust, and it's built on like sort of building the trust with someone to be able to be that open. And that doesn't always come in the package that you want or expect it to be. And the third thing I'll say about it, which I think is really fascinating and really important about this film, is that generally these kinds of erotic thrillers, again, if we put this into the genre, they'll lose. So the woman main character who goes and does this thing and they'll end up losing their job and getting, in the end, sorry, spoiler, but things don't go that bad for her. She wins. And I think that is a really special thing about this film.
Yeah, because I think my favorite erotic thriller in that genre is Park Chan-wook's The Handmaiden. I think that's an incredible movie, and I haven't seen it in a while because I saw it at the cinema, so it was years ago. But there's something about that movie that's I think everything around the actual erotic stuff is, I find, to be gripping, where I didn't necessarily find the stuff around the erotic stuff to be enticing in Babygirl. But because I was talking about this after I saw it with people, that there's individual scenes that I really loved. Like I loved the scene with the cup of milk. I think that's a really amazing scene. And I love the scene about consent later on in the movie, and I thought they were great. But just especially with when it comes to the ending, I just felt that like those scenes didn't pay off in a way that I wanted to, and maybe because I know that her previous films, Bodies, 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 which I haven't seen, but I know that was a subversion of the horror genre. What people expected from horror, and I believe that was also another film that the trailers did not advertise correctly compared to what it was. So it could be just a case of that the filmmaker wants to do. Not, I don't think it necessarily subverts it because it does stick to kind of erotic stuff, but she wants to tell her version of that, and I don't necessarily think that. I don't know if that's the film that I wanted to see, if that makes sense. It's like I think the idea about the power dynamics and the changing of those dynamics, and especially with a scene later on that I won't go into, but where that yet again shifts again about what the power goes into. I wanted it to go into a later reveal that I thought was going to go somewhere interesting, but it just kind of doesn't. And but I think all the acting is really good. Harris Dickinson is, I think, excellent in the movie. I think he does a really good job, and Nicole Kidman is good. Antonio Banderas is amazing. Sophie Wilde, who I'm pretty sure she was in, was it Talk to Me that she was in? I think it was Talk to Me, which shocked me because I think I'm so used to her short hair. So seeing her, I was like, why do I know her? And I was like, but yeah, it kind of clicked that she was in Talk to Me. She was also really great, and yeah, it's like one of those things that's like, and people probably can tell from the type of films that I constantly talk about that it's not necessarily my kind of movie, but that's fine. I think similar to The Substance, which I also said that I think that, it's okay that films aren't for me, because it'll find its audience and people will love it. And I think that I know that I'm in the minority of this. I know that a lot of people are really connecting with it. I know that from what I can see that you're really dug it. And that to me is more important than anything, that movies find their audience and, people captivate to it. And, I'm not a stickler to the whole thing. Like, I don't like this whole deal that, oh, critics don't like it, therefore you shouldn't like it, if that makes sense. I don't agree with that philosophy, or the opposite way as well. The critics like it, you don't necessarily have to love it, and it's so critics loved this movie. I wasn't a big fan, but I think that I think it will find the audience for the people who want to enjoy this, and I think that it will gravitate to them in really interesting ways. And
I'm going back to what you've said about acting and the characters. I do agree with you, and I think that's maybe one real strong thing about this film that critics probably all sort of agree with, is that the three characters, Nicole does pretty much is in every scene in this film. So it is her, very much like Demi Moore, which although like Demi Moore sort of shared with The Substance with Margaret Qualley, Nicole Kidman carries this film, and she does do a great job, in my opinion, of really, watching someone struggle, someone, like I said, struggling about their sort of identity, what they shouldn't do, what they want to do, what they need to do, and how to grapple with their various different, like what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do. So that I think was really powerful. I think Harris Dickinson was great. I mean, I've seen him in a few things, and he is a good actor, and he's coming out as a incredible actor. And as you said, Antonio Banderas, I mean, he's fantastic. Let's just be honest. He's a great actor. So I would have one critique, which I said I maybe wouldn't have said, but I would, if I were Harris Dickinson, I would have kept his English accent, because I think his American accent in there was just not working for me. And one of the things that they were specifically saying about, like, the sex scenes being funny or not really I don't think this was as sexy as like the film Challengers, which last year everyone was calling like the sexiest film. And I think that is, again, one of the things that the way that they're sort of representing this film and what this film is about. And I do think play, like, I do think it is more about, you know, a person's identity, a person's, you know, inner world, and a person's ability to fully express who they are. And that is different than an erotic thriller, which is what
Yeah.
maybe it was asked to be. But given that, as I said before with Demi Moore, it's amazing to see Nicole Kidman, who was, you know, in one of the best erotic films, like, you know, of Stanley Kubrick's film, that like it's great to see her in this role years later. And so I think it's a fascinating choice to have her as the main character as well.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of interesting things to say. I might be the harsh one of the two, but I still there's moments that I really did enjoy, and I think it is worth going to see. I think that it's a different type of movie, and I think that if you want to experiment, tell Nicole Kidman wants to experiment, I think that it's worth giving a shot. But I would say yeah. But yeah, I think it's worth the watch, and yeah, Antonio Banderas. Love that man.
Okay, well, if you like Harrison Dickinson, Nicole Kidman, or Antonio Banderas, you probably maybe like this film. I did, at least, and that film is Babygirl, and it's out in cinemas right now. We talked a little bit about it, but like big films coming out. What is the next film you're going to see? Like, what are you really excited about? I said, you've talked me into IMAX, I think, Brutalist. I think that's the way I'm going to go after our conversation. That'll be my next. But how about you guys? What films are on your plans for the rest of the month?
A Complete Unknown this weekend, and then The Brutalist next weekend in IMAX. And I'm looking forward to seeing Saturday Night as well, but I don't know the SNL movie, but I'm not quite sure when that's gonna come out. But that's another one that's kind of on my radar, I guess, before the Fun of Berlin kicks off next month.
Yeah, for me it's The Brutalist, and even though I've seen it 4 times, The Colors Within comes out the 31st January. I love that movie. Very different, but it's just beautiful. It's gonna get snubbed at the animated categories, but it's worth checking out. It's just a really lovely movie.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and that is coming out here as well. And
Yeah.
I'm currently in Florida, so I'm gonna go check it out at your recommendation. But you said it got snubbed so it's not gonna make it in the animation category.
Yeah, anime films have never done particularly well. I think I would have to look back at all of them, but I think all the anime films that have been nominated are at least a Ghibli movie, minimum. But yeah, I know it's eligible for the Oscars. I know that G-Kids, the US distributor, have put it forward. Doesn't mean it'll get nominated. But yeah, it's a great movie. I love it. It's just, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you all coming in the next couple of months. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.